Hey, I wanted to do a video on SHTF energy. So I've kind of mulled this over for a long time. I've thought about getting solar panels. Well, I might as well let you know where I'm at. So I have a cord of wood in my garage. That's where it starts. Well, unfortunately, it's survival. It's not planning for the ideal situation. Which is why I've had that same cord of wood in my garage for about 4 years now. I burned, I have one fire winter, something like that. But that's number one. So not freezing to death, having the ability to have a fire is clutch, obviously. But I'm talking more about energy, electricity, energy. So after that, I have my generator, um, and a few batteries. Not many. Um, Nothing that I could. I had initially planned to buy a bunch of batteries. Then I bought my e-bike, and then I was gonna buy an inverter. Long story short, I have like maybe 50 amp hours, 12 volts storage. I have the inverter, but I don't have really the storage yet to run the system because I kind of put all of my money into my e-bike batteries. And I was thinking about dual purposing it and getting a 48 volt inverter so I could use my e-bike to power my house when the power went out, right? And then recharge my e-bike off of the generator instead of buying a whole separate battery kit. And I still might do that. I don't know, a 48 volt inverter would be like $150. But this is where it gets kind of like, okay, things are looking really, really iffy. And granted, I'm viewing the world through a American media. And I think that's enough said. But the way things are being presented to me, it's evident that the future is very uncertain. So long-term energy storage, not energy storage, well, yes, energy storage, but long-term energy management, including generation capacity, has to be taken into account. Now, if I'm gonna, if I'm in for a penny, I'm in for a pound. So I've already taken kind of the short-term steps. I have a gasoline generator. I have 20 gallons of gasoline. I have a few, batteries that I could utilize to maybe power my cell phone, a charger, a few miscellaneous lights for a couple hours, every night, but not a television, not a refrigerator. But the generator could, but you don't want to run the generator all the time. So, but even then, I only have 20 gallons of gasoline. So that's not generation, that's still just storage. It's really, that gasoline is just a giant, disposable battery. It really is. It's a giant disposable battery with the capacity, the energy it has, but it's not generation capacity. It's short term. And if things really go sideways, like they could, and given enough time, certainly will, but in the short term, certainly could. It's time to make a decision about what I'm going to do to generate electricity. So I thought about, and I've talked about this in the past, I know. And you can tell I'm kind of nervous, but I'm not. I made the decision because I was trying to go green, but I wanted to be making the right decisions to not buy solar panels that I was only going to use in an emergency, or make a huge investment in solar panels on my roof when I could just get stable energy prices for 2 years. And so I bought a 2 year green energy contract instead of buying solar panels. And I think that's the right decision. And what I'm looking at now is not buying solar panels at all, potentially ever, and instead pulling the trigger on a portable, emergency use only wind turbine. And I think that it's very speculative, and it might be foolish because I don't live in a windy area. They're noisy. They're, attention grabbers. They're all the things you wouldn't necessarily want during SHTF, unless it's really, really just terrible weather, and the weather becomes the primary threat. And in that environment, I think that a tripod mounted, 10 foot off the ground, set it up, take it down, wind turbine with a battery bank starts to make the most sense. It might sound crazy, but the thinking is I already have a gasoline generator. And outside of that, one storm, standard American emergency, that would be more than sufficient. Or inside. Outside of that, it's kind of like you don't know what the conditions are going to be like, and if the solar panels are going to be necessarily safe outside. And I don't mean necessarily from theft, although that's a concern, but I mean just from the damage from the wind, from the hail, from the lightning, from everything. And yeah, so that's pretty much where I'm at, and also considering that almost no matter what happens, we're going to be seeing increased wind speeds. Like I said, right now, I could probably take a wind turbine that I'm thinking of buying, which is not a big one, let's say 1200 watts. I could probably put that up 100 feet in the air and not get enough wind speed to really be generating capacity. But I think that in a year or two, if things really, really go bad, that might be not true 10 feet off the ground. So strong winds might be the primary threat of the future, but because they are the primary threat, they might be the greatest asset. And if that's the case, I'll be the guy, because I'm thinking of pulling the trigger on that. Not necessarily this week. I'm getting really nervous about getting cut off from China with supplies. And I know there's a lot of warehouses in America, but I think if they say you're done, we're not sending any more, number 3 screws, then, all of a sudden dominoes fall around the world. So it might not be that catastrophic, but pretty darn close. Like, things would shut down quick. We really live off of their exports. So, political tensions are, and that's a political move, is to set trade embargoes. That's a political precursor to war. That's a Cold War tactic. And if we're engaged in any sort of Cold War hostilities, we can expect trade embargoes. That's a given. Best case scenario, So I want to make moves, because if we get cut off and then followed up by a natural disaster, we could see real long-term power outages. Real long-term power outages. Like, you're on your own. So that's what I'm thinking, is the you're on your own solution is the windmill. The windmill is the you're on your own solution. I don't think solar panels are. I can't rebuild my solar panel. With very few exceptions, I can rebuild every part on a wind turbine. Every single part I could find something and make it work. Solar panel, I wouldn't even know. So I think that's my decision. Like I said, I'm gonna probably buy a cheap one off of Amazon or eBay for in the $200 to $300 range, and rig it up in my garage on my on a tripod you can hang deer from. I was gonna pull compressors with back when I was doing refrigeration, and and use that as my SHTF generator, because gasoline won't last more than a week with no inputs, and I got hydrogen machines to run and water to distill. I've grown accustomed to this lifestyle, so I do want to shower in hot water. So I'll be pulling the trigger on that in the next week if we make it that far. Well, I have a feeling even if we get cut off by China tomorrow, be able to get stuff from Amazon for at least a month. But outside of that, I would be surprised if there isn't a run on everything. So that's my 2 cents on energy.